you guys, I am back and today we are going to talk about screenwriting. Usually I'll discuss scripts and projects that I'm working on in passing, but I never really get down to the real work of it. I've even talked about my backstory and what led me to become a writer and what it took and all the struggles and whatnot and some of the choices I've made to pursue this field. But again, I've never broken it down, the process. I think everyone is familiar with the first, second, and third act. I like to break it down furthermore by using the 8 sequences. You can find it on Final Draft. You can find it on ISA, I think Network ISA or something like that, but there are plenty of other platforms to discover the 8 sequences. And quick little story, when this is very new into my career of screenwriting. I can't really call it a career at the time because I was a kid. I was like 16, sophomore year of high school. I woke up one night at 3 a.m. in this severe panic. This is a core memory. And I remember telling myself, if I want to do this, I got to get serious. And so I did my research that very night, and I have a notebook here somewhere. If I find it, I will show it because it is so dear to me. But the first page was the breakdown of a script and what each sequence represents. And so I want to talk to you about it today. It is, in short, the inciting incident, or the setup, the inciting incident, the first obstacle, the midpoint, or it's the main obstacle kind of. Oh, and then sequence 5, different websites will say sequence 5 is the subplot. And then in this one it says twists and turns. That's up to you, I guess. Really it's up to you on how to write a script. I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to write one. Some people are known for their ingenuity and decide to completely alter the acts and story tell differently. So who am I? But I like to use the sequence 5 portion of the script for subplot, and I'm a big fan of subplot too, so that's how I utilize it. And then sequence 6 is culmination, the low point, or honestly it could be a high point and then there's a plot twist. Either way, sequence 7 is the climax. It can also be interpreted as a plot twist, but a climax obviously must happen in a story. You don't have to take it from me, but then sequence 8 is your resolution. So as I'm reading this, there are other, this is so great. They have movies here that can tell you the sequences throughout the story. There's La La Land, When Harry Met Sally. I love that movie so much. I love both of those movies. Pirates of the Caribbean, which is so cool. My 2 very best friends love Pirates of the Caribbean. That's their favorite movie. But anyway, all right, but let's get into the sequences itself and how they are defined. So sequence 1 is introductions, basically. So it's the setup of the world, of your characters, and where they are, who the characters are, definitions, basically. And then when you get to sequence 2, that's your inciting incident. Now this happens 10 to 15 minutes in. This is a major event, and it kind of shifts the world, changes the trajectory of the story, and it kind of sets up Act 2, which begins at sequence 3. So sequence 1 and 2, first act. Sequence 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, believe it or not, second act. 7 and 8 is third act. That's how it's divided here on the Final Draft, and typically that's really how I follow. Honestly, I think in my head I begin the last act with sequence 6, but hey, to each their own, right? So anyway, so sequence 2, 10 to 15 minutes in, inciting incidents. This is where some of the stakes are introduced, and stakes can represent typically something time related, but it's not always that. And you get this major event, changes the trajectory of the story, and it kind of sets up the world and the journey your character is going to go through in sequence 3, which is the second act, the beginning of the second act. So in sequence 3, you have your first obstacle. And here the character is going to, amidst their journey, something is going to interrupt them, and they're going to have to recalibrate, change their course, basically. And even if I read it from here, it says the start of the act of the start of Act 2, the protagonist has officially entered the new world. During Sequence 3, the protagonist faces real obstacles, their first real obstacle, and new tensions, and the stakes are raised. So, like I said, pretty much. And then that will lead us to the midpoint, which is Sequence 4. Some might call Sequence 4, along with Sequence 3, the fun and games of the movie. This is where, when the obstacle happens and you fix it and you change the trajectory, you kind of see that montage or that sequence of things kind of relatively going well. This is kind of a high point in your story before you're disappointed again, you know? So these two sections deliver the promise of the premise as well. In Sequence 4, the protagonist faces another obstacle or dilemma that comes across as a direct result of what happened in Sequence 3. This sequence usually ends with the midpoint. So there is another obstacle introduced in the midpoint. I think when I was reading, or when I was kind of talking about the sequences, the fourth one is like the second obstacle or the first culmination, or the main, like there, I think I said something like that, but it constitutes an obstacle, a conflict, another conflict. So fun and games interrupted with an issue. We're gonna get led into basically into the midpoint, the end, or something. Like, I think in my head, Sequence 5 is midpoint. This is subplot, basically. We're like at the middle of the story when it ends, and then we're gonna get into the, I guess, what the middle is comprised of, kind of the heart, the internal narrative, the subplot, how it relates to the theme. That's how I usually like to pursue a story. But here, you know, it's described differently. So Sequence 5 usually contains the twists and turns of Act 2. This is when secrets are revealed, relationships are tested, tensions rise, obstacles get more challenging to overcome, and the protagonists are really put to the test. In this sequence, the protagonist typically rebels against whatever growth they're confronted with, wanting instead for things to stay the same. Again, I do it a little differently, but you don't have to take it from me, obviously, but this is what Sequence 5 is comprised of here, as told by Final Draft. Like I said, I like to use Sequence 5 to I guess journey into the internal narrative of the story and the characters and some things that are relevant to the theme of the story, but it's not about the protagonist right now. But you know, I think it's good to incorporate more conflict, more build up throughout. So yes, I would encourage you. Maybe I'll alter my story a little bit too, to say that, oh, okay, there are a couple of things that that need more more push, more like propulsion, I guess. So anyway, Sequence 6, that's your like main obstacle. That's the hard part. This is the biggest thing ever that you're gonna do. And all of Act 2 culminates in this. Sequence 6. Things have steadily gotten more and more difficult for the protagonist, all leading to the culmination of the low point. At the end of the Sequence 6, the protagonist finds themselves at a point of the culmination, positive or low point, like I said, or negative, that directly leads to the next sequence, the climax. So this is the fallout. This is where it's just a complete smackdown, or it's a high point. There needs to be a balance. If your Sequence 4 is a low point, you kind of maybe want to have Sequence 6 a high point. You don't want some tone, the tone of your story to be stagnant, and that also kind of, that there's a possibility could impede on the character's arc as well. If you have only high points or if you have only low points, you need that balance and that shift so your character can learn how to maneuver and grow. So really, if you understand the primitive nature of storytelling, it is about a character. It is about somebody going through a journey and changing. That is the beauty of storytelling. We use it as a conduit of lessons and growth and teachings. So if you view it that way, you'd understand why we need variation in terms of conflict and reward. So Sequence 6 does represent that. And so it will propel you into Sequence 7. Here it says climax, I also interpret it as plot twist, or you can incorporate the both. You need a climax in the story. You definitely need one. Otherwise, it's just almost like, what was it all for? You know what I mean? It's going into a story, watching a movie is not easy writing. You need to be not necessarily put on the edge of your seat, but there has to be some suspense there. So that's what sequence 7 is about. Whew. So here on Final Draft, it says, this is it. The big moment. The massive fight scene, the come to Jesus moment where your protagonist must change or die. Everything is on the line, and the stakes have never been higher. It all happens in sequence 7, and we, the audience, learn whether or not the protagonist succeeds or fails. So that's basically that. You know, you could share it with plot twist and a climax. Climax is most necessary. Plot twist helps. Okay, and then the last one, sequence 8, is resolution. I don't like to waste too much time on resolution, I'll be honest. You want to show the ramifications of what had happened and evidence that there is a reason for this story to be told, but I wouldn't say this is another build up to something else. You don't want to take a chunk of time just to validate the story through sequence 8. But here it says, sequence 8 is a narrative epilogue. It's what happens when your character, after their success or failure during the climax, including a look at how they have been impacted by that success or failure. In this sequence, the journey we've been on since sequence 1 comes to an end and fade to black. So those are your 8 sequences. And then we can go ahead and do the case study. It says case study here. Ooh. But case study, we got La La Land. We've got When Harry Met Sally. I think that's so cute. I think I kind of want to do When Harry Met Sally. I am very familiar with La La Land, though. Both of them are great. All right, let's do La La Land. So sequence 1, we meet Mia. At 17 minutes, the first sequence is a little bit longer because of the opening song and dance, but story-wise, sequence 1 covers everything we need to know about Mia. We'll see her at work at Warner Brothers, coffee shop, at an audition, at home with her friends, and post-Hollywood parties at a post-Hollywood party where she finds out that her car has been towed and ends up at a jazz bar, okay? And then we get into sequence 2, which is meet Sebastian. The next La La Land backs up to introduce Sebastian, showing his day leading up to his first run-in with Mia. We learn about his obsession with jazz, meet his sister, and see him go to the restaurant where he plays upbeat Christmas tunes until he can't take it anymore. Sequence 2 ends with Seb ignoring Mia when she tried to talk to him. And sequence 1 and 2 cover the first, winter section of the movie. I'm not going to dissect La La Land, but it goes in seasons, and even the set design is in accordance to the seasons. But it's really cool, but I won't go into that. I will say sequence 2 might be a little misleading here in this story because, as it was mentioned, you need an inciting incident, but you also need stakes. So stakes weren't really introduced here. But anyway, sequence 3 is Mia and Sebastian reconnect and get to know each other. This is the start of Act 2, and the section includes the pool party, a song and dance that's called a lovely night, the walk around Warner Brothers backlot, and their first trip to the lighthouse to listen to jazz. The final scene of sequence 3 also serves as the first scene of sequence 4, where Mia finds out that she got a callback audition. See, sequence 4 is we're going up. Falling in love, sequence 4, and they make plans to see a movie together. Seb sings wistfully on the Hermosa Beach pier in City of Stars, and the rest of the sequence is taken up by their movie date in Rialto that culminates in a kiss at the Griffith Observatory. Sequence 3 and 4 cover spring section of the movie. Sequence 5 double down on their dreams. In sequence 5, Mia and Sebastian help one another to commit to their dreams. Mia writes a one-woman show, and after a run-in with an old bandmate, Sebastian decides to join a pop jazz group. The sequence ends with the song Start a Fire, when Mia and Seb start to both figuratively and literally drift apart. So we're going to our low point. Sequence 6 is Trouble in Paradise. Sequence 6 sees The happy couple torn apart. First, Mia and Seb get into an argument during what should have been a nice surprise visit. Then Seb forgets about the photo shoot, which causes him to miss Mia's one night only play. Mia, distraught by their low turn, says it's over. She's going home to Nevada. Sequence 7, the audition. In the big climax of the story, Sebastian drives to Nevada to find Mia and tell her about an audition she landed because of her play. She explains that she wants to give up on acting, but he convinces her to return to LA for the meeting, and which is the song Audition. Sequence 7 ends with Mia and Sebastian in Griffith Park wondering what their future will hold. Sequence 8, epilogue, basically. It's 5 years later. We see the reality of both of them and how they both turned out. She went on to get married to somebody else, or in a relationship with somebody else. She has a kid. He opened his jazz bar. Her and her husband are in town. They go to the jazz bar not knowing that it's Seb's place. She enters, she sees Seb sees her. They make eye contact. They know that, they both moved on, but a part of them resides within each other, kind of that connection. And that's how the movie ends. I think that one is a unique pick, in my opinion. That is no critique on the movie, but I think, to kind of prove the sequences or validate them, I think we can try When Harry Met Sally, and I don't have to get into it, but sequence 1 is when Harry and Sally drive to New York and they get to know each other. That's the setup. Sequence 2 is when Harry and Sally run into one another at the airport. In the second sequence, the last part of Act 1, Harry and Sally find themselves on the same flight and end up continuing their argument from years before, but are not even close to becoming friends yet. Sequence 3 is when Harry and Sally finally decide to be friends. 10 years after the story actually begins, Harry and Sally both find themselves single again when they spot each other in the bookstore. After a long chat about relationships, they decide to start a friendship. Sequence 4, when Harry and Sally both get back out there. This is the fun and games. See, this is this helps paint a picture of the 8 sequences. So the fun and games of them dating and stuff like that. And then sequence 5 is when Harry and Sally deny their feelings for each other. Sequence 6 is when Harry and Sally both deal with their exes. Though Harry and Sally both say that they're fine in regards to their respective breakups, during the sequence they both end up falling to pieces. A run-in with an ex-wife leaves Harry angry about a wagon wheel coffee table, and a phone call from her ex-boyfriend leaves Sally tossing Kleenex around apartment with reckless abandon. 7 is when Harry and Sally sleep together and it's super awkward. And that's kind of a plot twist to me, because they end up sleeping together. They have so much chemistry. Everyone knows they belong, or they're made for each other. They deserve to be a couple. And they do. They sleep together and it doesn't turn out right. Harry is so weird about it. Sally is upset that he's weird about it. And that's your climax kind of, but also that plot twist in a sense. And then sequence 8, they make up, they're friends, and even more than friends. And that's how the story ends, and it's so beautiful and everything is great and the world is happy. So those are your 8 sequences. I wanted to go in detail and talk about it. It certainly helped me paint a picture or design a map, a blueprint for my stories. It's a good thing for me to help a good thing to refer to when I am writing a story. And really, when I'm working on my script, I have notes. I do hold on, let me verify this. I think, yeah, okay, so yes, it was David Lynch. So David Lynch, would say, take index cards, 70 of them, write a scene per. And I didn't follow that to a T. Honestly, I just make notes of each scene, and knowing how long is it going to be. Is it going to be 2 pages? Is it going to be 1 page? Minute long, 2 minutes long, basically is what I'm saying. But I write that down, and that's something I'm going to follow through, because you know what? I'm a forgetful girl. Okay? I'm forgetful. Life is busy. I got other things to do. I have a tendency of, when I am focusing on one thing, I will put all of my focus into it. So when I revert back to another task, it's kind of like, where am I? What am I doing? so I have to ground myself with a bunch of notes. It's like Memento. But yeah, so I write down my scenes and then I refer to them, but I like to break it down into 8 sequences so I know what's going on, where are my high and low points, how is the story going to progress. And in a conventional sense, as a writer right now, I'm not trying to be that unique. I'm already unique enough by fucking doing everything that I've done to pursue this field and the genres that I picked and the concepts that I picked. I don't want to rewrite the format of the chronology of a story. Not me. I'm not doing that. I'm not Tarantino. Okay? So I have my notes laid out for me to refer to because I need to make sure that it is following kind of those 3 acts and 8 sequences. That's about it. I hope this was beneficial to you. From one writer to another, keep going. The integrity truly lies in the pursuit of the field. Of course, our dreams and to succeed and to bring your goals to fruition is, can't even lie, definitely more rewarding than the journey. I'm not gonna lie to you, but there is a lot of integrity in doing what you love, and that does not, in the very least, failure or success diminish your self-worth. So I hope this helps. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, rest of your week, and I will see you later. Bye.